Alright, we're going to get started with our project here. This is our Scalextric Lotus, and we're going to do a couple of things. First of all, we are going to change the motor to the new Predator motor. That's a milder motor for this car. I think it's a perfect match. Plenty of speed, it tames the car down a little bit. Such a small car. I really like the way it performs with that motor. But the second thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the guide here. Now, a lot of people, this guide has a little bit to be desired, but there's one thing that you need to know, and there is not a lot of room to make a big change here. You notice these thin wires, and that's because there is not a lot of distance between the top here and the inside of the car. So we're going to get a little bit creative here, but what we're going to do is we're going to stick in a Slotting Plus Universal Sport Guide with some better braid, and we're going to see if we can get this thing set up to where we've just got a good tripod on our wood track. That's the way I like it. So I guess we're going to get started. We're going to start with the guide and disassembly. Alright, so what you're seeing is I'm utilizing the original wires and the ends that were on here. These are the ends that slipped inside the guide plate, and what I've done is I've trimmed one at about that height, and this is the original. You can see the little clamp right there, the way it is. So I trimmed it about halfway, and this way it'll be able to slip down into our guide right there where we can mount the braid. So let's get to it. Alright, so this is a little challenging to show you in video, but I'm going to include some photos. But any of you that are willing to go this far for tuning, I think you're going to get it. I think you're going to understand. So what we've done is we've got our Slotting Plus guide, and I put the braid in it. Okay, already got it set, got it cut. And then what we've done here is we've taken the braid and we've moved it forward. And what we're going to do is we place this tab behind it, and it slips down right there behind. So when you slip that in there like that, then you take the braid, you move it back over, and we add an M2 set screw, like the set screw method, and we drop it in there and put it in. Now the pressure, is it enough? Yes. It is a very good fit, nice and snug, good connection. So that's how we're going to go with that. Now it's time to set the ride height. We'll discuss that here in just a second. Okay, so now we're going to talk about setting the ride height here, and again, this is all personal preference. Some people like the front tires supporting weight, some don't. I'm in the middle. To me, my kind of tripod is where the fronts are just touching. They turn under speed, you can see them move, but they're not supporting a lot of weight. This allows that guide to be maximum depth that it can be in the slot. That's just the way I like it. So during the setup here, that's just about what I got. Just perfect. They're still touching. I just did this track side. Sometimes that's just the easiest way, just to make sure. So that's just about where I got it. Now I'm going to show you how we got there. On some cars, when we do the ride height adjustment, when we do a guide mod, we like to true the fronts and everything to make sure they're as true as can be. But in this case, I'm not doing that, and that's because this is a solid assembly here, this whole suspension assembly, and as you can see how it fits in, the easiest thing for you to do is glue this piece in place. And the reason that I'm not going to true them is I do not want to twist these wheels off to put them in the tire raiser to true them because of this plastic assembly. I can't get the pulley on there, so that's fine. They look pretty good to me anyway. And when we set it up the way I'm setting it up, we're not going to have a problem. But these fronts, they look pretty good. So the first thing I did was I glued this in place, and that's why we did not true the fronts. And then with the guide set in place, so we put the chassis We get it back on here. We get back here. You'll notice your suspension. I took the rear wheel assembly out of there. It makes it a little bit easier. Just spread apart the plastic, these little very fragile suspension pieces, so that you can mount that back in there. You get your front set up. You get your guide in there. And now you can check your height. So it's about as close as it gets. So now we're going to talk about the distance and the parts that I used to do that. Okay, so it took a little bit to figure out the ride height, so I thought I'd share it with you. Now, again, we just showed you about the wheels here, and we left those on there, and I have them glued in place. But here on the chassis, it was just test as you go. Once you take the original guide off of there, you have a pretty big space. Bigger than you think, really. You wouldn't think it would take this much, but it does. So what this is a CG Slotcars adapter. Okay, so you can see that. And that's just press fit in there. There's no glue in there right now. It's just press fit, so it's a good fit. And that's a 3/32 adapter, and I'll show you the part number for that. And I started with that. So I started with just the adapter. You know, I installed the guide, put it in the car, put it on the track, and noticed it wasn't right. So then our shims come into play. So these are the Slotcar corner nylon guide spacers. These are the 20,000s, and I'll show you the part number for those. And I started with one. That wasn't enough, so I started with two, and that gave me the sweet spot. So that's where I want to be. So now, once those are installed, now we know where to trim our guide post. So we're going to trim that, get it permanently mounted, and we'll be good to go. Alright, so trimmed the shaft, got the screw mounted in here, really nice and snug. That's exactly what we wanted. One more thing I wanted to show you. You notice these little tabs that we used, you have to bend them a little bit. They're easy to bend, so I bent those because you got to have your rotation. So you bend those out of the way, everything works fine. So now we'll put it in the car, and I'll show you, you know, the rotational distance that we have, and we have plenty of clearance. Okay, and we are finished. As you'll notice, we have plenty of good rotation here. Nice and smooth. You'll notice that there's no rubbing from the bulkhead to the body, so no trimming was needed there. That's a good thing. Nice and smooth. It's exactly what we wanted. And our goal was to get a better guide up here, a little bit more depth, tightened up, not so wobbly, and we accomplished that. It's looking good. The guide rotation, I think, is more than enough for these little cars. Some of these cars have less than that, so I think we've done pretty good. That's more than enough for my racing. So anyway, I hope this helps you guys with aftermarket guide installing these cars. Of course, each car is going to be different. You're going to have your own different challenge as far as room goes, because yeah, it's kind of constricted, but for most of these cars you can get a good aftermarket guide in there. So anyway, hope it helps you, and I look forward to your comments online and appreciate you guys following along.